The Marine was ordered to leave. His injured K9 made him stay. The order came through the radio without emotion, without pause, without room for argument. It told the Marine that the weather window was closing. It told him that extraction was no longer guaranteed. It told him that survival required movement, not hesitation. Ethan heard every word. He did not answer. The mountain stood around him in silence, tall and unmoved, its slopes buried under fresh snow that swallowed sound and distance alike. Wind pushed through the pines in long, steady breaths, carrying the smell of ice and stone. Somewhere below, the valley disappeared into a white blur where trails and time no longer mattered. Ash lay on the ground beside him. The German shepherd did not whine. He did not bark. He did not try to rise. His body was still except for the slow lift of his chest, shallow but present, each breath a quiet effort against the cold. One of his hind legs lay at an angle that did not belong to a living thing meant to run. Ethan knelt, his knees pressing into snow that soaked through his pants within seconds. He placed one gloved hand against the dog's side, feeling warmth that should not have survived this altitude, this wind, this long delay. The radio crackled again. The voice repeated the instruction, firmer now, shaped by protocol and distance. The voice did not see the dog. The voice did not feel the wind. The voice did not know what it meant to leave something alive behind. Ethan turned the radio down. Ash opened his eyes. They were dark and steady, not wide with fear, not clouded by pain. They followed Ethan with the same focus they always had, the same quiet attention that had once made him different from other dogs. Ash had never rushed ahead. He had never broken formation without reason. When others advanced, he stayed. When others barked, he watched. Now he watched Ethan. Ethan had been trained to move when ordered. He had learned that hesitation cost lives. He had learned that rescue depended on timing and discipline. He had followed those rules once before, on a night filled with smoke and heat and screaming alarms, when a door had closed behind him and the fire had taken what remained inside. That night, he had survived because he left. The mountain did not care about rules. It did not reward obedience. It only waited. Ethan reached for Ash, sliding his hands beneath the thick fur along the dog's shoulders, careful not to touch the injured leg. Ash did not pull away. His body leaned into the contact, just enough to close the space between them. Snow gathered on their sleeves and coats, settling like ash from an unseen fire. The radio spoke again, quieter now, distorted by interference. The words were the same. The meaning did not change. Ethan shut it off. He checked the leg with slow, deliberate movements, the way he had been taught to check wounds when panic made hands useless. There was swelling. There was damage he could not fix here. No splint he carried would restore what was broken. No medicine would turn time backward. The wind rose, cutting sharper through the trees. Ash shifted slightly, just a small movement, barely there. His paw twitched. His head lowered until his muzzle rested against Ethan's wrist. The contact was light, not a plea, not a demand. It was presence. Ethan closed his eyes. For a moment, the mountain faded. In its place came the memory of heat and alarms, of voices shouting instructions that sounded just as certain, just as necessary. He remembered how he had followed them. He remembered the silence afterward. When he opened his eyes again, the mountain was still there. Ash was still breathing. Ethan pulled off his outer jacket and wrapped it around the dog's body, sealing in what warmth remained. He pressed his own chest against Ash, shielding him from the wind, accepting the cold without thinking about it. If rescue came, it would come late. If help arrived, it would not be enough to undo what had already happened. But Ethan was here. Ash remained awake, his eyes never leaving Ethan's face. Snow gathered along his ears and back, melting slowly into his fur. The mountain watched, unmoved, as daylight began to thin. This time, Ethan did not leave. And in that choice, quiet and unseen, something else began to hold. The night settled in slowly, not with drama, but with weight. Darkness crept down the mountain as if poured from above, thick and patient. The wind eased for a moment, then returned in long, uneven gusts that pressed against Ethan's back and slipped through the trees. Snow continued to fall, light but steady, layering sound and distance until the world felt smaller than it should have been. Ethan stayed where he was. He shifted carefully, angling his body so the wind struck him before it reached Ash. His arms had begun to ache from holding still, but he did not loosen them. Movement meant heat loss. Heat loss meant time slipping away. Ash remained quiet. His breathing was still shallow, but it was there. Each rise of his chest felt deliberate, as if the dog was choosing every breath instead of letting it happen on its own. His eyes were half open now, unfocused at times, then sharp again when Ethan adjusted or spoke his name softly. Ethan spoke to him without thinking about words. He talked the way he had learned to talk in the worst moments, when silence became dangerous. He described the mountain. He described the snow. He told Ash about the trail they had followed earlier, about the sound of water beneath the ice, about the sky turning gray instead of white. He did not talk about rescue. He did not talk about mourning. Ash listened. Now and then, his ears twitched at the sound of Ethan's voice. Once, he shifted his head just enough to press his muzzle more firmly against Ethan's arm. The contact was grounding, heavy with trust. The cold grew sharper as the hours passed. Ethan could feel it settling into his fingers, into his toes, into the places where muscle met bone. He flexed his hands slowly, carefully, refusing to let numbness take over. He adjusted the jacket around Ash again, tucking it tighter, sealing gaps where warmth escaped. The mountain remained unmoved. There were moments when Ethan's mind tried to wander, when it reached for old instincts that told him to calculate distance, probability, survival rates. He pushed those thoughts away. Numbers had failed him once before. Timing had failed him once before. Tonight was not about precision. It was about staying. Ash let out a soft breath, longer than the others. For a second, Ethan thought it might be the last. His chest tightened, his body leaning forward instinctively, as if will alone could keep the breath from fading. Then Ash inhaled again. It was small. It was uneven. It was enough. Ethan rested his forehead against the dog's head, not pressing, just touching. He closed his eyes and let the sound of breathing anchor him to the present. The past did not belong here. The future had not arrived yet. Time slowed. Somewhere in the distance, a sound echoed through the valley, faint and indistinct. It could have been wind against rock. It could have been something else. Ethan did not lift his head. He did not strain to identify it. False hope had a way of hurting worse than none at all. Ash stirred slightly. His front paw moved, just an inch, dragging against the snow. The injured leg remained still, but the effort traveled through his body, a reminder that he was still fighting in the only way he could. Ethan whispered his name again. The sky lightened almost imperceptibly, the black thinning into deep gray. Dawn did not arrive all at once. It edged in slowly, cautious, as if unsure it was welcome. The snow eased, then stopped, leaving the mountain quiet in a way that felt different from before. Ash was still alive. Ethan opened his eyes fully for the first time in hours. His vision blurred at the edges, but the shape of the dog against him was clear. He adjusted his grip, careful, reverent. The night had taken something from both of them, but it had not taken everything. Far off, the sound returned, clearer now. A low rhythmic thudding that did not belong to wind or stone. Ethan lifted his head this time. He did not move. He did not wave. He did not call out. He stayed. Ash's eyes followed his gaze toward the sky. For a moment, just a moment, the dog's ears lifted slightly, responding to something beyond the mountain, beyond the cold. Ethan did not know if help would come in time. He did not know what would be saved and what would not. But as the light grew and the sound drew nearer, one truth remained unchanged. This time, he had not left, and neither had Ash. If you are still here, stay a little longer. Some moments only reveal themselves to those who do. Morning did not arrive with warmth. It arrived with clarity. The light spread slowly across the mountain, revealing what the night had hidden. Snow clung to the branches in heavy, uneven layers. The ground around Ethan and Ash was packed down from hours of stillness, their shapes pressed into it like a memory the mountain had not yet erased. The sound from the sky grew louder, steadier now. Ethan lifted his head and looked up through the thinning clouds. The shape of the aircraft emerged in pieces first, a shadow, then motion, then form. It circled once, cautious, measuring wind and terrain the way pilots always did when the ground refused to cooperate. Ash reacted before Ethan did. His ears shifted, slow but intentional. His eyes tracked the movement above, focused despite exhaustion. His body did not try to rise. He did not bark. He simply stayed alert, present, as if acknowledging that something had finally answered. Ethan exhaled. Not relief. Not yet. Just release. The aircraft descended as far as it could, keeping distance from the ridge. Snow lifted in wide arcs beneath it, scattering across rock and brush. The noise filled the valley, breaking the long quiet that had wrapped the night in place. Ethan raised one arm when he was sure he could be seen. He did not shout. He did not rush. He remained beside ASH, one hand still anchored against the dog's shoulder, reminding himself and the world that he was not leaving first. The aircraft pulled back, then settled again. This time, closer. Rescue personnel approached on foot, their movements careful, deliberate, shaped by terrain that punished mistakes. They did not speak at first. They took in the scene the way experienced eyes always did, noticing what was wrong before asking what had happened. One of them knelt near ASH. He did not touch the injured leg right away. He checked breathing. He checked eyes. He checked the quiet strength that had carried the dog through the night. His expression changed, just slightly, the way it did when survival had come down to something fragile and rare. He looked at Ethan. "You stayed," he said. It was not a question. Ethan nodded once. They worked without urgency, but without delay. A thermal wrap replaced the jacket. Equipment appeared that Ethan had not carried and could not have used alone. ASH remained still through it all, trusting hands he had never known because Ethan did not move away. When they lifted ASH onto the stretcher, Ethan rose with him, his body stiff, his legs slow to respond after hours of cold and stillness. He placed one hand against ASH's neck until the stretcher was secured. The SH turned his head just enough to keep Ethan in view. The injured leg remained unmoved. One of the rescuers spoke quietly, choosing words with care. He explained what they knew and what they did not. He did not promise recovery. He did not speak of timelines. He spoke of stabilization and transport and the next step, not the end. Ethan listened. The mountain stood behind them, unchanged, indifferent to outcomes. As they prepared to move, a question hung unspoken. Ethan felt it in the way the team looked at him, in the pause before they turned toward the aircraft. He answered it without words. He climbed in beside ASH. The door closed. The sound swallowed everything else. As the aircraft lifted, the ridge fell away beneath them. The mountain receded, returning to silence as if nothing had happened there at all. Ethan watched until the snow blurred into distance, until the place where he had stayed no longer existed below. ASH lay still, eyes open. Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice to a tone meant only for the space between them. He did not speak of strength. He did not speak of survival. He spoke of presence, of being here, of not letting the moment slip away before it had been understood. ASH's breathing remained shallow but steady. No one said the word miracle. No one needed to. Some things were not saved by speed. Some choices did not erase damage. But as the aircraft carried them forward, one truth settled quietly between man and dog. They had arrived late. They had stayed anyway. And for now, that was enough. The flight did not feel like rescue. It felt like suspension. The aircraft moved through the air with steady force, its vibration constant and low, filling the cabin with a sound that pressed against the chest rather than the ears. Ethan remained seated beside ASH, one hand resting along the dog's shoulder, the other braced against the floor to steady himself when turbulence shifted their weight. ASH lay strapped in place, wrapped in layers meant to preserve what the mountain had almost taken. His eyes remained open, dark and calm, tracking nothing and everything at once. The injured leg was secured, supported, protected from movement. It still did not respond. Ethan did not look away. Time inside the aircraft lost its shape. There were no landmarks. No horizon to measure progress against. Only motion. Only sound. Only the quiet work of staying aware while exhaustion tried to pull him under. When they landed, it was not dramatic. There were no shouting voices. No rushing footsteps. The aircraft touched down with care, as if even the ground understood what it carried. Doors opened. Cold air rushed in, replaced quickly by hands and voices that spoke in tones meant to calm rather than command. They moved ASH first. Ethan followed, his legs stiff, his body slow to adjust after hours of stillness and cold. He felt every step, every ache, but he did not stop. He stayed close enough to see ASH's face as they rolled him inside, close enough to keep that line unbroken. The building was small, practical, built for necessity rather than comfort. Light hummed overhead, steady and white. The air smelled clean, sharp with disinfectant, and something metallic beneath it. Ethan had smelled it before, in places where outcomes were uncertain. ASH was transferred carefully, lifted with precision that respected pain even when it could not remove it. A woman in a dark jacket spoke quietly as she worked, explaining each step without asking questions that did not need answers. Ethan listened. He did not interrupt. They examined ASH with patience, checking responses, monitoring breath, confirming what the mountain had already revealed. The injured leg was addressed last, not out of neglect, but out of understanding. Some wounds demanded time before touch. ASH did not resist. His eyes found Ethan whenever they could, grounding themselves in something familiar amid hands that were kind but unknown. Ethan remained still, his presence silent but deliberate. At one point, the woman looked up at him. "You can stay right there," she said. It was not permission. It was recognition. Hours passed. They blended together in a way that made clocks irrelevant. Ethan sat when he was told to sit. He stood when space was needed. He followed instructions without question, not because he was ordered, but because he trusted the care being given. Eventually, ASH was moved again, this time into a quieter room where machines hummed softly, where the lights were dimmed to ease strain rather than illuminate urgency. The immediate danger had passed, but nothing had been resolved. Ethan took the chair beside the bed. The weight of the night settled into him then, not all at once, but piece by piece. His shoulders sagged. His hands trembled when he rested them on his knees. He did not sleep. He did not close his eyes. ASH's breathing remained steady. A man entered later, older than the others, his movements unhurried, his voice measured. He spoke with Ethan away from the bed, just far enough to keep ASH in view. He explained what they suspected. He explained what they could not yet know. He did not soften the uncertainty. He did not dress it in optimism that had not been earned. The leg might heal. It might not. There were paths forward, but none of them were simple. None of them promised a return to what had been. Ethan nodded. He asked only one question. "Will he be alone?" The man shook his head. "No," he said. "Not if you stay." Ethan returned to the chair. The room grew quieter as activity slowed, as night replaced day outside walls meant to keep time from intruding. The hum of machines became background. The steady rise and fall of ASH's chest became the center of everything. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped loosely together. He watched the dog he had almost lost, the dog who had never rushed ahead, the dog who had stayed when everything else demanded movement. His mind drifted then, not to the fire, not to the past he carried like a weight, but to smaller moments. To silence shared on long trails. To the way ASH would stop instead of advance, forcing Ethan to look closer, to wait, to see what others missed. Staying had always been his way. Ethan reached out and rested his hand against ASH's shoulder again, light, careful. ASH's eyes shifted, meeting his. There was no confusion there, no fear, only recognition. Outside the room, the world continued. Schedules resumed. Decisions were made that did not involve them. But inside, time slowed again, bending around two beings who had learned the cost of leaving. Whatever came next would come later. For now, ASH was alive. For now, Ethan was here. And in the quiet space between breath and waiting, that was enough. The room changed after the second night. Not in ways that announced themselves, not with alarms or raised voices, but with absence. Fewer footsteps passed the door. Fewer voices spoke in low, urgent tones. The light outside the window shifted with intention now, marking time again instead of holding it in place. ASH remained where he was. His body was quieter, more still than before, the kind of stillness that came from exhaustion rather than danger. The machines continued their steady rhythm, patient and unremarkable. Each sound blended into the next until they felt less like warnings and more like reassurance. Ethan noticed the change before anyone said anything. He felt it in the way his shoulders no longer stayed locked, in the way his breath did not catch every time ASH exhaled, in the way his hands stopped shaking when he rested them on the edge of the bed. He stayed seated beside ASH, his posture unchanged, his presence constant. Sleep came only in fragments, brief moments where his eyes closed without permission, where his body leaned forward and rested against the bed rail before he pulled himself back. When he slept, he dreamed of waiting. Not of fire, not of smoke, but of standing still while everything else moved past him. Of holding a line no one else could see. Yesh stirred late in the morning. It was subtle, barely enough to draw attention. A shift of weight, a deeper breath. His eyes opened fully for the first time since arriving. Not clouded, not distant. They found Ethan immediately. He leaned forward without thinking, his hand lifting to rest against Yesh's shoulder. He did not speak right away. He waited, letting the moment settle before naming it. Yesh's gaze held. The woman who had been checking monitors paused. She watched the exchange without interrupting, her expression softening in a way that came from experience rather than hope. "He is more present today," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. That was the word he would have chosen. Present. Later, they tested responses. Gentle touches. Careful adjustments. They did not rush. They did not expect more than the body was ready to give. The injured leg remained still, unchanged, a reminder that survival did not always mean restoration. But when Ethan spoke Yesh's name, the dog's ears shifted. Just slightly. The movement was small enough to miss if no one had been watching. But Ethan saw it. The woman saw it too. They exchanged a look that acknowledged the moment without inflating it. It was not a breakthrough. It was a signal. Ethan stayed. He listened as they spoke about the road ahead, about healing that would be slow, uncertain, shaped by patience rather than certainty. He asked no questions that demanded answers no one could give. He only asked what Yesh needed. The answer was simple. Consistency. The afternoon passed quietly. Light moved across the floor in long, narrow bands. The world outside the room continued its rhythm, unaware of the fragile progress being made within. Ethan adjusted Yesh's blanket when the air shifted. He spoke to him about nothing in particular. About the mountain they had left behind. About the snow giving way to stone beneath their boots. About silence that had taught him to listen better. Yesh remained awake through most of it. His breathing was steady. His gaze softened when Ethan's voice lowered. Once, he shifted his head just enough to lean into the touch on his shoulder. The movement cost him effort. He did it anyway. That night, when the lights dimmed again and the room settled into quiet, Ethan leaned back in the chair for the first time. He did not leave. He did not even stand. He simply allowed his weight to rest fully where it was. Yesh slept. Deeply this time. Ethan watched the rise and fall of his chest, the proof that staying had mattered, even if nothing else changed. He did not think about what might never return. He did not measure loss against expectation. He focused on what was here. Life, fragile and incomplete, still choosing to remain. Outside the room, someone walked past and glanced in, then kept going. No one interrupted. No one spoke. Inside, the night held steady. Yesh was alive. Ethan was still there. And for this moment, that was enough. The third day brought a different kind of weight. It was not the sharp urgency of the mountain, nor the fragile tension of the first night inside the building. It was quieter than that, heavier in a way that settled into the room without sound. Ethan noticed it in the morning. Yesh was awake when the light shifted across the wall, his eyes open, steady, tracking movement again. His breathing remained even. His body was still, careful, conserving strength. The injured leg had not changed. It lay where it had since the mountain, unmoving, waiting. Ethan greeted him the same way he always had, with presence. He rested his hand against Yesh's shoulder, light enough not to disturb, firm enough to be felt. Yesh leaned into it just slightly, acknowledging the contact without effort. It was the kind of response that spoke of trust rebuilt one moment at a time. Later, a man Ethan had not met before stepped into the room. He was polite, measured. His voice carried authority shaped by policy rather than terrain. He explained procedures. He explained transitions. He spoke about care continuing elsewhere, about schedules and responsibilities shifting now that immediate danger had passed. He paused before saying what he had come to say. Ethan listened without interrupting. "You have done everything you could here," the man said. "The dog will be transferred to a longer-term care facility. You are cleared to return." The words settled between them. Return. Ethan looked at Yesh. The dog did not react to the conversation. He did not lift his head. He did not shift his weight. His eyes remained on Ethan, steady, present, as they had been since the mountain. Ethan stood slowly. He followed the man into the hallway, careful to keep the door in view. The building felt different outside the room. Louder, less contained, movement everywhere, none of it anchored. The man continued speaking, outlining timelines and expectations. His tone remained respectful. He did not raise his voice. He did not issue threats. He spoke as if the decision were already complete. Ethan stopped walking. "I am not leaving him," he said. The words came without force, without heat. They were not a challenge. They were a statement of fact. The man hesitated. "This is not required," he said. "The dog will be cared for." Ethan nodded. "I know," he said, "but I am staying." There was a pause, the kind that followed choices no one could argue with using rules alone. When Ethan returned to the room, Ash's eyes followed him. Ethan took his seat again, his posture unchanged, his presence reaffirmed. He did not speak of the conversation. He did not explain. Ash did not need explanation. The afternoon passed quietly. A therapist arrived, moving with careful precision, testing responses without pressure. Hands guided. Voices stayed low. The injured leg remained unresponsive, but the rest of Ash's body engaged when called, alert in its stillness. Ethan watched closely. He saw the effort it took for Ash to remain present, to endure examination without retreating inward. He recognized that strength. He had lived it himself. That evening, as light faded again, Ash grew restless. It was subtle, a shift in breathing, a tightening along his shoulders. His eyes tracked the doorway more often, flicking toward sound that meant nothing and everything. Ethan leaned closer. He spoke softly, grounding the space with his voice. He described the mountain again, not the danger, but the quiet. The way the wind had paused before dawn. The way the snow had settled after the storm passed. Ash's breathing slowed. His eyes softened. The injured leg remained still. Ethan did not ask it to move. Later, when the room darkened and the building settled into night, Ethan remained seated, his hand resting where it had become familiar. He felt the exhaustion in his bones, the ache that came from days without rest, but he did not pull away. He had been ordered to leave before. He had followed that order once. This time he stayed. Ash slept, deeper now, his body trusting the stillness that surrounded him. The machines hummed softly. The world beyond the door continued without them. Inside the room, nothing was resolved, but nothing had been abandoned. And for now, that was enough. The seventh morning did not bring certainty. It brought decision. Ethan felt it before anyone spoke. The room carried a different tension now, not sharp, not urgent, but expectant. Ash was awake when the light filtered in, his eyes clearer than they had been days before. He watched the door. He watched Ethan. He listened to sounds beyond the walls with quiet attention. The injured leg remained still. A team arrived mid-morning, moving with the careful confidence of people who had reviewed notes and formed questions before stepping inside. They spoke softly, not because silence was required, but because they understood the weight of what they were about to discuss. They explained the next phase. The mountain was no longer the threat. Time was. They spoke of recovery that might never return full movement. They spoke of pain management, of adaptation, of choices that would shape the rest of Ash's life. They did not hide the truth. They did not soften it into hope that could not be sustained. They spoke plainly. Ash listened in his own way. His ears shifted toward each voice. His gaze returned to Ethan. Again and again, grounding himself in what remained constant. One of them knelt beside the bed and tested responses once more. Gentle pressure, careful movement. The injured leg did not respond. The rest of Ash's body remained alert, engaged, willing. The contrast was stark. Ethan felt his chest tighten, not with panic, but with recognition. He had seen this before, not in dogs, but in people who survived what they were not meant to, who carried damage forward instead of leaving it behind. The question came without ceremony. They asked Ethan what he wanted to do. He did not answer right away. He looked at Ash. The dog's eyes met his, steady, unflinching. There was no fear there, no confusion, only presence, only staying. Ethan spoke slowly. "He stays with me," he said. The words were not loud. They were not defiant. They were simply true. There were logistics to discuss, adjustments to plan, responsibilities to acknowledge. None of it deterred him. He listened. He agreed where agreement was required. He accepted what could not be changed. Ash remained still through it all. When the room cleared again, the quiet returned heavier than before. Ethan pulled his chair closer, resting his forearms against the bed. He spoke softly, not explaining, not reassuring, just speaking as he always had when words mattered less than tone. He told ASH about what staying would mean. Slower days, different paths, learning to move without rushing ahead, learning to stop without guilt. ASH breathed steadily. Later, when they began gentle therapy, the effort showed. ASH's body tensed as muscles were guided, as limits were tested and respected. He did not resist. He did not retreat. But the strain was visible, etched into every controlled breath. Ethan stayed close. He watched ASH's focus waver, then return. He saw the moment when effort became too much, when the body needed rest more than progress. He spoke then, grounding the moment, easing the pressure without removing the task. ASH rested. That afternoon, the sky outside darkened unexpectedly. Clouds gathered low, pressing against the windows. The light shifted, reminding Ethan of the mountain, of how quickly conditions could change. He felt it then. The memory of being ordered away. The memory of doors closing. The memory of leaving because leaving had been the rule. He looked at ASH, at the dog who had stayed when movement was demanded, who had survived not by advancing, but by refusing to abandon the moment. Ethan understood. That evening, as ASH slept, Ethan remained awake. He watched the slow rise and fall of the dog's chest. He counted breaths without numbers, letting rhythm replace measurement. He did not pray. He did not bargain. He simply stayed. When ASH woke later, disoriented for a moment, Ethan was there. The confusion passed quickly. ASH's eyes settled. His breathing steadied. The injured leg remained still. It was not healed. It might never be. But the rest of him remained present, alert, alive in a way that could not be measured by movement alone. As night settled in again, Ethan rested his hand against ASH's shoulder, the familiar contact anchoring them both. Outside the room, choices continued to be made by people who would never see this moment. Inside, a different kind of rescue had taken place. They had not saved everything. They had not restored what was lost. But they had chosen not to leave what remained. And in that choice, quiet and unremarkable to the world beyond these walls, something enduring took shape. Not victory, not miracle, but commitment. And for now, that was enough. The days that followed did not rush forward. They settled. Routine returned in small, measured ways. Morning light through the window. Soft footsteps in the hall. Voices that no longer carried urgency, only care. ASH adjusted to this new rhythm slowly, learning the shape of time again without the mountain pressing against every breath. Ethan stayed. He learned the sounds of the room, the difference between machines that mattered and those that simply existed. He learned when ASH needed quiet and when his voice helped more than rest. He learned how much patience could hold when strength alone was no longer enough. ASH changed in ways that were easy to miss. His gaze followed movement again. His ears lifted at familiar sounds. His breathing deepened, no longer guarded by pain alone. The injured leg remained still, unchanged, a reality neither of them avoided nor challenged. It was simply there. One afternoon, Ethan opened the window just enough to let fresh air in. The scent carried something distant, pine and cold stone, faint but recognizable. ASH lifted his head and breathed it in, his nose twitching once before settling again. The mountain was far away now. Ethan sat beside him and said nothing. Words felt unnecessary in moments like this. Presence had proven itself sufficient. Later, as evening settled in, ASH shifted his weight carefully. It was not an attempt to stand. It was not progress that could be measured or recorded. It was adjustment, the quiet intelligence of a body learning new limits. Ethan noticed. He placed his hand against ASH's shoulder, steady, familiar. ASH leaned into it, resting his head there, his eyes closing for a moment longer than usual. Sleep came easier now, not because everything was healed, not because uncertainty had disappeared, but because neither of them was alone in it. When the lights dimmed and the room grew quiet, Ethan remained seated, the chair no longer a place of vigilance, but of belonging. He did not count time. He did not think ahead. He allowed the moment to be what it was. ASH breathed. Steady. Present. The world outside continued its motion, full of urgency and departure. Inside the room, something different held. They had not saved everything. They had not restored what was lost. But they had stayed with what remained. And sometimes, quietly, without recognition or reward, that was enough. The ending did not arrive as a moment. It arrived as acceptance. There was no announcement. No final decision spoken aloud. Life simply continued in its quieter form, shaped by what remained rather than what had been lost. Ash rested in the light near the window, his body settled into a position that no longer fought pain, only accommodated it. His breathing was calm. His eyes opened and closed without effort. The injured leg stayed as it was, unchanged, neither demanded nor denied. Ethan sat beside him, not because he was needed in that instant, but because staying had become a way of being rather than a choice that required explanation. The chair beneath him no longer felt temporary. It felt earned. Outside, the day moved on. People passed the door without stopping. Schedules resumed. The world returned to its pace, quick and unforgiving, unaware of what had been decided in stillness. Ash lifted his head slightly and looked at Ethan. There was no question in his eyes, only trust. Ethan placed his hand where it had rested so many times before, against the familiar strength of Ash's shoulder. The contact was light, intentional, enough to say everything words never could. They had not outrun loss. They had not undone damage. They had not been spared, but they had remained. In the end, that was what mattered most. Some rescues arrived too late to save everything. Some miracles do not restore what was taken, but sometimes dignity is preserved. Sometimes truth is honored. Sometimes staying becomes the quiet act that saves two souls at once. Ash closed his eyes again, his body at rest, his presence unbroken. Ethan stayed where he was, and in the space they held together, free of urgency, free of command, something gentle settled in. Not victory, not triumph, but grace. And for those who understand what it means not to leave, that was enough. Some stories do not end with answers. They end with presence. If this moment stayed with you, you are welcome to subscribe and remain here for the stories that follow. If you feel inclined, leave a quiet word below, something simple, like here. And when you are ready, stay with us as the next story begins.